Okay, so today we're going to be talking about fractional indices, and we're going to be focusing on fractional indices with a numerator of 1. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is what does it really mean when I see a fractional index that has a numerator of 1? Well, there's a simple rule that you want to make sure you are aware of, and that is when I see, for example, a fractional index of a half, it means the square root of a half. And in a similar fashion, when I see a fractional index with a third, it means the cube root of whatever that base is, a in this case. Now let's keep going. I'm sure you're able to predict by this time that a fractional index of a quarter implies the fourth root of a number. And one last one, a fractional index of 1/5 implies the fifth root of a number. Now let's just recap what this really means. What does it mean when I say the square root of a number? Okay, now remember, you're asking yourself which number multiplied by itself gives me the value under here. So you're asking yourself in this case, which value multiplies by itself to give me a? So blank times blank must give me, in the end, a. And let's continue here. Blank times blank times blank, all being the same, has to give me a. And that's what it means when I see the cube root of a number. And I'm sure you could continue that going down the line. So this is the first property that you must know about fractional indices. What does it really mean? It means what? It means the square root of, or in the case of to the power a third, the cube root of, or in the case of the power a quarter, the fourth root of, and so on and so forth. So what we're going to be looking at now are just a few examples of how we're going to work this. And let's start with a very basic example. Let's go over a little bit more here. A very basic example. Let us say, for example, 25 to the power a half. Now, if we look back over here, what does to the power a half mean? It means the square root of. So we're going to write the square root of 25. Now you ask yourself, of course, what number times itself is going to give me 25? That's what you're really asking. What number times itself is going to give me 25? And the very obvious answer is 5. So therefore, you know that 25 to the power a half is equal to 5, because to the power a half implies the square root. Let's try another example. 8 to the power a third. What does that mean? 8 to the power a third implies the cube root of 8, which means what number times itself again is going to give me 8. And you have to figure out what that number is. By this time, I'm sure you know that number is quite obviously 2. If you don't, you can just try to think about that. Try to multiply several numbers by itself. If it's going to multiply to give me 8, clearly we're thinking about numbers smaller than 8. And you can, by logical deduction, get your way there in no time. Now we just want to look at a few more examples, because the exercise is going to get slightly more tricky in a short space of time. Now, what if I said to you 100 to the power negative a half? Now, this is one that you have to really think about. Now, if we think back to when we did negative indices, we're going to tackle these two components separately. And I'm going to break it down for you, one bite at a time. So we're going to tackle the negative component, and then we're going to tackle to the power half. Now, if you recall, a negative index implies 1 over whatever I had, whatever the base was, which in this case was 100 to the power a half. So now I've eliminated that negative by writing it as 1 over. Okay, now we've tackled that part. That part was fairly easy. So I know that that is the same as that right there. Very good. So let's move on to the next step. Let's look at what does it mean to be to the power a half. Now, we did this just now. To the power a half implies the square root of whatever the base is, in this case 100, and the square root of 100 most definitely will be 10. So I want you to look at the steps that I took to get there. So the first thing I tackled was the negative index. So the first thing we got rid of was our negative index, okay? And then we looked at the fractional index. So we took it step by step. And you'll see a few of these in the exercise that you are about to do. But in short order, we were able to come up with 1/10 as our final answer. Now, in the exercise that you are about to do, you will see a few questions that are definitely going to test how much you remember from regular indices, just the laws of indices. All right, so let us talk about, for example, if I had 9 to the power of 0 plus 9 to the power of a half. Now, please remember that there are no laws for when we are adding. There is no law for indices for when we're adding. So we're going to have to tackle these two components separately. Two separate things. Now, 9 to the power of 0, hopefully you remember that 9 to the power of 0, any number to the power of 0 is, you guessed it, 1. Very good. And 9 to the power of a half. Now, this is what we've really focused in on today. And 9 to the power of a half really just means the square root of 9. And the square root of 9 happens to be 3. 1 plus 3 is definitely going to give me an answer of 4. There you go, and that's our final answer on that one. Now, lots of questions for you to practice, but the only thing you want to remember is, let's take it way back. Fractional indices, a to the power a half implies the square root of a to the power a third implies the cube root of a to the power a quarter, the fourth root, and so on and so forth. Have fun with the exercise, do well, and I wish you the best of luck.